Without any further ado, I'll hand over to Haneen Maikey, who's the director of alQaws for sexual and gender diversity in Palestinian society. It's a real privilege and pleasure to have her in London. Haneen always manages to really inspire audiences with the work that alQaws are doing and that Haneen is leading as director. So firstly, thank you so much for your time, Haneen, and it's over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Actually, my best talks ever is in London, and it's always with these amazing partners, so I'm happy to be here again. Hope I will not be boring for those who already went to my talks. So how many of you know anything about alQaws? I need to see. Okay, I'm not doing a good job, so we'll fix it in a bit. What I want to do in my 40 minutes, 30 minutes, we will see how much I need to talk, is to give you a brief introduction and history about alQaws. Then I will explain or introduce, share with you the three main different intersections we work within, and for my opinion, actually impact our politics. We'll end it with some kind of new analysis about pinkwashing and its impact on local communities, rather about international communities, right? So alQaws is a group of Palestinian LGBTQ activists who came together to work to dismantle sexual and gender hierarchy and open a broader discussion about sexuality in Palestine. That means that we are using our own sexual orientation, gender identity, expression, behavior that we see as different, so we can open these discussions by exposing the links between different sexual and gender oppressions, talking about institutions and power that regulating our sexuality on a daily basis, basically making the links between different groups in one society rather than making a case about that gay rights, it's a special oppression, right? So in that sense, alQaws is not a gay organization. A lot of people in alQaws will kill me now if they hear me say that, right? But I'm the director, so I have power, so I can redefine it. So, but that means that this tension between a lot of activists inside alQaws wanted to make it a broader discussion about sexual oppression, and some other friends who wanted to push it toward more a gay rights approach. I think it's a worth to focus on, because this is a reflection on a broader kind of tension happening inside local communities and international communities between global LGBT politics, right? We are a one big happy pink family, and other groups who wanted more to work on sexual oppression and focus on local context, right? These tensions are also happening inside alQaws, so we are not that a special organization in that sense. And we also believe that discussing LGBT issues, sexual and gender diversity in isolation from the broader political and social context in Palestine, which is Israeli occupation, right? Apartheid structure, Nakba strategies and displacement, all of these things, any sexuality discourse cannot happen in isolation with these really materialized kind of oppressions on a daily life of any Palestinian. So we also believe that the current political analysis needs a queer lens a bit, maybe, so we can queer it up, have some kind of a new lens about sexuality and gender, and to see how, especially how a lot of international community and neoliberal powers is using gay rights to actually divide the world into who's progressive and who's not, who's modern and who's not. So we think that sexual analysis is really important to any liberation struggle happening now in different forms, and hopefully in a more structured way in the future. So this like very radical manifesto is not like it didn't like happen because we were like really happy and drunk and wrote it, right? It was like 10 years of a real field experience that on most of the times it wasn't radical and it was also problematic politically. So alQaws in 2001 was actually part of an Israeli Jewish Zionist organization in Jerusalem. Actually, the funny story about it is that they published an ad looking for a Palestinian, they called it Arabic speaker something, community organizer to reach out to LGBT Palestinians living in East Jerusalem. And while I was like, wow, exploring my sexuality, it was the perfect timing and the perfect hat, right? So I can hide under this professional hat and explore my sexuality. And one thing was really, really obvious to me that no, I don't know anyone crazy that will apply to this job. So it was really clear that I'm gonna apply to this job and get it, right? I will be the only one who, and I was right. I was the only one who did this interview and got this job. So I'm not here because I'm qualified. I'm here because I found through the way a lot of amazing friends and colleagues and LGBT activists from all around Palestine who were like committed to have a conversation, an honest and accountable conversation about these issues. And I am privileged enough that to be in this power position. But all of this analysis, all of this work is the result of a lot of people's work. It's a collective kind of analysis. So I want to also put that here. So 2001, we started as a very tiny local service-oriented project, apolitical, right? We were exploring our sexual orientation in a Zionist Israeli apolitical organization. It's a joke, but it's true. It's true. And in one of the most hectic political periods, right? It's a couple of months after the second Intifada, and a bunch of queers sitting in a community center discussing sexual orientation. And I think while it's really understandable, I think what happened in different meetings that once we finished the meeting and went downstairs in downtown Jerusalem, so soldiers were stopping us, right? Friends who came from the West Bank, back then the apartheid wall was not that close, so people can like somehow get in, so people will not be able to come. So all of these like political situation was coming in, imposing itself into these discussions, and it was really hard to ignore. And what we did is just to contain it, work with it, and see how we can be queers in Palestine and what that means to be queer in Palestine and Palestinian queer, right? All of these like questions were really, really tense. Of course, like being in this situation, we started to feel and see how colonizer-colonized basically dynamics started to reproduce itself in terms of what language we can use, right? We couldn't use occupation because this like apolitical Jewish Zionist organization could not allow us to use occupation, or funding, or PR, or a lot of things. And in 2005, we decided that the best thing to do is to just split and separate from the Jerusalem Open House. And it wasn't a lesbian breakup in that sense, right? We didn't talk about it before, we didn't talk about it after. It was a one-sided decision. It was a very personal one. Like, we decided that we are going to separate. It was not, even though the motivation was a reactionary one, right? It was transformed through the 2 years process to something like, so how we are going to create this organization, who are we, and how we can establish an LGBT organization in such a context, and what kind of strategies, framing, content, language, terminology we can use so we can be a relevant and group, an integral part of a Palestinian society that's struggling with a lot of social and political issues. These were the main questions that's still happening and taking place inside alQaws on a daily basis, right? So this is a very brief history, and I want to move on to intersections of our work, right? So we are around 12 years, right? It's really funny because friends from organization in Ramallah had a lunch with someone, and this someone said, "Can you believe maybe these people will create their organizations in a bit?" And she was like laughing, "Yes, they've been around 12 years. So a lot of people like you don't know anything about alQaws. Also, a lot of people back home don't know anything about alQaws. And these issues we want to explore why it's happening. So basically, LGBT organizing in Palestine is happening within 3 major hegemonies, powers, intersections, and a lot of our analysis evolved from actually dealing with it, sometimes resisting, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, sometimes because we felt it and we had a direct impact, sometimes because we read and had different interactions. So the first major power is sexuality in Palestine, right? There's no sexuality in Palestine. I'm joking, there is a lot of sexuality in Palestine. But we are a society that facilitates a very harsh, tough taboo on sexuality, right? We don't discuss sexuality. Actually, I don't discuss anything with my family. That's not about only sexuality, but we don't discuss sexuality. And the only one who talks about sexuality is my grandmother, because she's old enough to be not a sexual human being, right? So she can discuss sexuality, but no one else discusses sexuality. And so we started to ask ourselves, so how we are going to discuss homosexuality in a society that doesn't discuss sexuality? Maybe we have the responsibility, first of all, to situate this homosexuality, sexual and gender diversity in a broader discussion about sexuality. And from within, we can talk about different groups, orientation, diversity. So this is why alQaws talking about these sexual and gender oppressions, opening a broader discussion about sexuality rather than focusing on gay rights. Second thing, it's patriarchal, Palestinian society, it's a patriarchal and masculine society, right? It's a very, gender roles are really clear, the hierarchy is very strict, heteronormativity, right? It's not a unique case about the Palestinian society, but it's very, it takes different forms and it's really visible. So how we can talk about LGBT oppression without first of all discuss, challenge and break down these institutions that are oppressing us, and what other groups in our society face the same or oppression, and how we can have an intersectional kind of discussion about these issues rather than just close a room and have a really bubbly kind of fun discussions and meetings. So this is like another layer of the discussion we encountered with during the year. The third one is the family. Like in Palestine, the family unit, the extended family, the collective unit, it's more valued than the individual, right? It's a very kind of really visible kind of structure. Family, like most of the queer people we work with and are part of this effort, are not like living alone. They don't have the opportunity to live outside of their own immediate families and surrounding, right? They live in these places. So how we are going to just talk about homosexuality or work on LGBT issues without taking into account the family? Is the family only an oppressional kind of unit, or it should be also can be a kind of supportive, or sometimes the only supportive network for a lot of individuals? So our approach is not to just take the individuals and give them all of the Western talk about come out, homophobia, all of this stuff, but rather build some kind of rebuild connection with one's self, family, and society. So this is a really, for me, an important thing that have a lot of, had and still having a lot of impact in how we understanding sexual experiences in Palestine. Homophobia. there is homophobia in Palestine as everywhere, right? It's like not a rooted sickness in our society that like the Israeli government love to thread the Western world with it. But homophobia is what we really started to talk about is how you can, homophobia, it's a visible attitude, right? You should tell me something so I can know you are homophobic. So how you can discuss homophobia in a society that doesn't discuss sexuality? So you see how like this homophobia framework doesn't really work in Palestine. One last thing about like criminalization and sodomy laws, right? You can see like organization like ILGA or other international organization dividing the world on these like really fancy maps on like who's having criminalizing homosexuality and who's not. Basically, it's Africa and MENA, right? It's like in one country and one country dismissive to all of the different amazing differences between these different countries. And these same international organizations forget that basically they brought these laws. It's not organic to Arab and Palestinian culture. These anti-sodomy laws are basically you brought it to us. Sorry to say that, but like it's a British mandate and French mandate laws that stayed in these colonized countries, Lebanon. Egypt and Jordan changed the penal code in '57, but like a lot of different North Africa. So we need to understand that we need to deconstruct these arguments all the time, that how these measures now that divide us and label us are just not organic to our society. So this was like, 10 minutes, fast 10 minutes about sexuality in Palestine. The second major intersections we work with, it's my favorite topic, is like Western LGBT strategies. I just love it. Which is there's the holy strategies. You need to face homophobia, you need to come out, you need to feel pride, and then you need to be visible and change the world, right? This is the four main steps any healthy gay person in the world should go through so he can or she can be perfect or sexy or or anything else, right? So this is not relevant to Palestinian society. Like I asked my friend, so when you had this need to come out, and people don't have this need to come out. I don't know from where other people have this need to come out, but people don't, like they may come out because they want support from their families and friends, but they don't have this urge of like coming out that I hear from other friends in different contexts. So this is really important, so we cannot like just copy-paste Western experience and trying to explain other local contexts. The problem is that everything you Google, you will get rainbows and pride parades, right? And gay men celebrating. There's all of these like things, very visible kind of signs. Also, young Palestinian queers will encounter and adopt in a way without further analysis. So we love in these our own communities to deconstruct these issues and provide some kind of new analysis. So you've got plenty of time. I have plenty of time. I have plenty of. Okay. So this is like one thing, how these notions are irrelevant, or how you can work with these around different individuals' experience. Second thing, it's how basically gay rights became, I said that about ILGA before, but in general, gay rights became the new global and universal measures of different nations, states, peoples, right? If you are progressive or not. It's the new woman case, right? You have women's right, now you have gay rights. So the world is divided into progressive and those who are not progressive anymore. So what is really interesting in this section, in my eyes, is how the dynamic between which I think it's a colonized colonizer kind of dynamic, but you can see it in a savior complex and how different white Western activists go to save different LGBT communities and we see now the discourse about Uganda. When I went into Heathrow, the guy who stamped my passport asked me what I'm gonna do here, so I was like, okay, let's use the LGBT card. I said, like, I'm giving a couple of talks about LGBT issues where in Palestine, and he was like, oh my God, it's really tough there, right? Okay, maybe. And I was like, and no one is, you're not getting enough attention now with Russia and Uganda, right? And I was like, I smiled, I swear, I smiled, and he stamped my passport. So what is really interesting about the savior issue is that in order for me to convince you that I want to save you, I need to convince you that you need to hate your own community. This is the only way you can be saved. And this is like, you know how many individuals and community, we just disconnect them from their own culture, society, and families, so we can have this satisfaction of saving other people. And it is really, really, really risky. And I see it on an individual and a group level also in Palestine. I want to say another thing about the savior aspect. In Palestine, basically, or the westernized, right, or it's imported from the West. In Palestine, this other or West in general, it could be also Israel, right? And sometimes it could be other different groups inside Palestine. So no matter who I am, every time I talk about sexuality, people will think I live in Haifa, right? They will immediately know what passport I have, or they will have assumptions about my religion. All of these concept of how to make us as activists also westernized, using also local divisions. We don't need to use America or the UK. We can use different groups in Palestine. So this is really, really in a very kind of zoom in how you can have the West inside your own community. One last thing about Western hegemony is Western media. I love journalists, love them. I have follow me on Facebook, because my favorite statuses is about journalists. They have one thing to worry about. They don't, I think my theory, they don't use Google. They don't even have browser on their computers, because they don't do gay Palestine on Google. And because if they do, they could decide it's not that a unique topic, right? Because everyone else wrote about it already, and it's the same story. So the same story is right? It's a victim, a Palestinian gay victim, that this journalists want to save by writing and quoting him. Sometimes they get really exotic, so they will have his Israeli boyfriend and the club and sex life and hint on these things. Sometimes they get more political, so they will have these fantasy stories about queer Palestinians crossing so they can be hugged by the Israeli lovers, and apparently there is the secret pink doors in the wall, so only queers can see it, according to journalists and media. So I don't reply to media inquiries anymore, so you can see how we have a good relationship. So this was the second major intersections, right? The third one is, of course, the Israeli occupation and colonized Palestine. So I don't want, this is not a lecture about the Israeli occupation, but I want to introduce to you how we dealt with these issues on a daily basis, what kind of strategies we work with so we can decolonize some kind of aspects that were impacting us. One thing is that since we began, we had a friend of mine just did attending on this event, and someone told her something like, do you have groups in Ramallah? You don't have any groups in Ramallah, right? And since the beginning, people from the West Bank were an integral part of the leadership of alQaws, groups, initiatives, leadership, board members, So it's really, we are actually the only Palestinian organization working in historical Palestine, which is something that I only discovered a couple of months ago. So what that means to be committed to work in such context? From the beginning, we saw that alQaws spaces would be the only spaces that Palestinians from different parts, like from 48, holding the Israeli citizenship, or West Bank, or East Jerusalem would meet. And from the beginning, we started to understand that this is a very risky kind of, because we started to hear a language of us and them. So you in 48 will have more freedom. Or will say, so you were killed, any of your friends were killed. All of these like internalized kind of propaganda, pinkwashing things were like started to reproduce in our meeting. And we tackled this from the beginning. Like we work on redefining who's Palestinian and who's not. And of course, this is only proof that Palestinian queers are occupation and colonization doesn't distinguish between queer and non-queer, and we also internalize the division, which is a very strong Zionist strategy and tactic happening in the last 70 years, that making the narrative that this land was with no people, right? We were a bunch of Christians, Muslim, Druze, West Bankers, Bedouin, but we are not Palestinians. So this erasing history and identity, it's also happening and internalized inside the queer community. So we are working hard on these issues all the time. And I think this decolonization kind of strategy of making, redefining who's Palestinian, it's very powerful. And one thing that we are trying to redefine in our daily work is that we work in separate parts of Palestine, actually divided by imposed checkpoints, 8 meters high, apartheid wall, borders, right? All of these things. So how you can build a community that can be also work on a local kind of leadership aspect, but have also a national kind of strong leadership, with the understanding that these borders are impacting our own life, but on the other hand, build a community above borders. So how you can like live and imagine some kind of a one Palestine, using the queer kind of analysis. On the other hand, it's illegal for me to be there, and it's illegal for my friend to come there. So it's really a really interesting dance all the time between how you can build one organization that is divided by real, harsh borders, that dividing your own families to limiting your mobility. So all of these things are like, we're talking about it all the time and inside our groups. The third one is anti-normalization policies. alQaws doesn't cooperate, work, answer emails to people who doesn't have any clear position on occupation, apartheid, and I think also very important to mention Jewish supremacy. These three things, if you don't have any clear position, we don't work with you. And we don't see ourselves as the educator of our colonizer. We refuse this kind of normalization. Is a familiar concept. Cool. So, and it's really important, normalization, because we live basically inside sometimes context and a network that there's a lot of also Israeli organization or Western organization that expect us to work with each other, or sometimes funding that. So we don't work with any organization that have condition on us working with other Israeli organizations. One last thing about this, it's pinkwashing. I started to hate pinkwashing so much last year, but now I'm reconnecting with the concept, and it's only my personal issues, so we'll not share it with you. Anyway, pinkwashing, I was using this so I can find the paragraph. So pinkwashing is a PR campaign, right? It's familiar, PR campaign funded and coordinated by the Israeli government in cooperation with a lot of Israeli, US-based right-wing Zionist organizations, and pinkwashing uses gay rights to promote a progressive image, progressive, liberal, fun, fabulous image of Israel. And this campaign actually aims to divert attention from Israel's war crime and violation of international law. So they will actually make you believe they are a gay haven, so you can forget that they are occupying other people. It's really simple, right? But it's not. The history of pinkwashing: 2005, Israel government launched a big branding Israel campaign. In 2007, 2 years after they added the gay rights thing into the campaign. It's a millions campaign, right? It's $millions of dollars campaign. It's a huge campaign. It's not like a team of 2 people who's working on it. It's a very kind of a lot of agencies, big agencies in the US leading big campaigns. So we need to understand it's a big big campaign. And I remember like the first attempt of pinkwashing was already in 2002. Like when the Israeli government, the Foreign Affairs Ministry sent email to all of the LGBT Israeli groups inviting them to a free video, PR video, so they can like distribute it in one of the big San Francisco events. So it was back then a very kind of organized campaign till it was like also formally a government decision. But like you can go to pinkwashingisrael.com, .net, .org, okay, and you can like go to pinkwashing website and have a lot of information about like tactics, strategies, campaigns. But what I'm interested in lately is to just start talking about the logic behind pinkwashing. And I think when we talk about the logic, I think it says more about us than the Zionist project. Because the Zionist project is not like hiding anything. It's a very kind of clear racist project, right? So I think there are 3 main logics behind pinkwashing. One is the colonial. It's a colonial strategy. It's based on actually emphasizing how Israel is fun and fabulous. But this is like, I don't think this is the center of the whole argument and the whole campaign. What this campaign aims basically is to dehumanize and undermine the Palestinian people and Arabs in general, and promoting them as homophobic, barbaric, and backward. This is the important part of the pinkwashing, not the first one. And I think it's really, so you can now, our relationship, it's not a colonizer-colonized anymore. It's about you progressive and I'm killing my gays. So this is like rebuilding some kind of new dynamic and letting me forget that I'm colonized even, right? And we will see now how Palestinian queers also internalizing this aspect. The second logic, it's a racist and Islamophobic analysis and campaign. And actually I see it as pinkwashing. It's a very powerful mean of making Zionism, which is ethnic, which is ideology, which is racist, right, more appealing to gay people. And I think in particular to those who already adopted some kind of racist and anti-Arab message to their own view of progressiveness. So pinkwashing is not only promotes a kind of racist fictions about Palestinians to the world, but it also relies on the fact that racism and Islamophobia already exist in this room. and in other gay communities. So it says a lot more about us. So like pinkwashing strategy makers are so smart because they know how people think. So we need to talk about ourselves too in the process of deconstructing this, this whole, why gay community is so much hugging the Israeli campaigns of gay people coming to their like international pride parades. We need to ask these questions all the time about us. The third like notion or logic, like pinkwashing is based on gay rights and Western framework. It's basically selling again that the reinforcing the isolation of gay identity from other identities, and in a way conceals the structural inequalities and injustice that make certain bodies, which is Jewish bodies, more acceptable and more valued than other bodies, right? And it's actually saying that there is no, pinkwashing had to use gay rights, so to talk with a lot of gay people, right? Because this is why we need to deconstruct this like Western hegemony and gay rights approach, because this is like a lot of oppression is happening in the name of these narrow single politics kind of approach. And pinkwashing, it's heavily relying on this. And also like pinkwashing, which is a very sexualized kind of project, right? Talking about sexuality a lot, and it make us forget that basically there's a lot of regulation on sexuality inside the Israeli law, right? The entry and citizenship emergency law that prevent Palestinians who living in 67 and 48 to get together if they are married. Jewish Orthodox community that have campaigns on gender separation in buses, or a lot of other. If you are Jewish Israeli and you want to marry, you need to convert in Orthodox way so you can get married. So all of these regulations on sexuality are happening inside free sexuality Israel. So we need also to have analysis about these issues. And two main points about the local impact, right? It's happening like a lot of foreigners coming to sandy beaches, Tel Aviv, having fun, going away. Palestinian Israelis going to a gay pride parade in Madrid, and it's fun, but none of us is talking about the impact of pinkwashing inside Israel-Palestine. And I think it's really interesting to see how pinkwashing could not happen if the Israeli LGBT community will not hug it tightly. And pinkwashing is basically the peak of their achievement of recognition of the government. So we need to hold Israeli LGBT groups also accountable. And it's really interesting how to see in their complicit way of promoting pinkwashing, how they reproduce the whole erasing the Palestinian queer agency in the mind, and you can see it in different interviews, lectures, papers, how the Israeli LGBT community, they don't admit there are LGBT queer groups inside Palestine. We are not existing in their own narrative, and if we are, we will harm their own narrative, right? So all of this erasing the identity of and history of Palestinians happening and reproduced also in the LGBT community. And what is really interested is the whole savior thing, right? Israelis and the Israeli government, through a lot of very committed Israeli gay people, are saving a lot of Palestinians and giving them asylum, right? They are refugees in Israel. So one thing I want you to take from this talk is how a country, a system, power who's based on making refugees on a daily basis, right? This is the job of the Israeli government, to make Palestinians refugees for one time in 48, 67, apartheid war, right? All the time. How they can claim they can give refugees to the same refugees they make years ago. So we need to stop being naive and just go to the facts. Israel, it's a machine of making refugees. They cannot give people's refugees, specifically Palestinians and also immigrants and workers who are coming now from Sudan and other places. And we need to be really careful about these arguments. One last thing about, so what is happening in Palestinian queer communities? Yeah, we have our own bubbles of like really radical queer activists, but like most of the things are happening outside of our bubble, right? People are living their lives. They don't need alQaws and they don't need NGOs or movements, and people are impacted firsthand from these issues. So what kind of dynamic this made that Palestinians now, who's colonized by this Israeli Zionist power, right? They believe that their colonizer have something that I want, right? I want also sandy beaches in Tel Aviv and hot gay men, right? I want also to travel. I want to consume tourism. I want to be free, because there is a new concept of freedom that was like sold, which is like so absurd and horrible. So this colonizer have all of my dreams, and myself, my community, and even alQaws cannot provide these things for me. So this is a real crucial kind of point that if we need to make the analysis of pinkwashing really accessible and personal, so we can deconstruct. I think we could encounter pinkwashing if alQaws could focus on pinkwashing and its impact in local communities. This is our first task. So I'm not interested in how you counter pinkwashing. I trust you. You have an amazing activist. I want to focus in the coming few years on deconstructing this thing inside my community. And I think what's really interesting is that it's not like I said, like LGBT communities and pinkwashing, we don't exist for them, but a lot of like individuals' pain, experiences, bodies that are used all the time to make actually as a proof that our own society is backward and homophobic. And I think one of the 2 years ago, and I will end with this story, someone came into my office and started to scream saying, I'm sick of it, I hate myself, I hate my family, I want to leave, and started to cry. And then after we laughed, because I laugh when people cry about it, so I asked him, so what are his plans to leave? And he was like, no, I can't leave, I don't have money, right? So it was like only sharing a very painful story. So we started to think, so how we can provide basically spaces inside alQaws to work exactly on these things. How you can like deconstruct this binary and internalize pinkwashing campaign and just work on this, how your oppression is not unique, how you can deconstruct the victimhood mentality, how you can like start re-understanding your experience in different ways, so you can rebuild trust with yourself, with your family, and in your society. And we do it a lot, and mostly in like young kind of activists inside. We had 3 groups, two in Ramallah and one in Jerusalem, and I think it's really powerful to see how when you talk about the various options of living and see how people are actually have more insight about their lives than alQaws and social movements, and can just make the links so they can live, continue living in a very safe kind of environment, and also be aware about how their body and sexual experience can be used inside their own communities and by their colonizer. And I will end here. I'm more interested in your feedback, comment, challenge me, not a lot because I'm tired. But yeah, let's hear it from you. I will close this.